It's interesting, Seth. It seems like a lot of the conjecture about the Texans is we're, one more week of OTAs this week, and then we've got minicamp next week. And then it's, the next time we see the Texans will be mid-July, earlier than usual, for training camp because of the Hall of Fame game. So looking forward to that. But it seems like if we're looking at the two sides of the football, like the consensus is this is going to be a really good offense. It was already pretty good last year. It's going to be really good this year with the additions that they've made, another year in the system, the continuity with the coaching staff, all of that. The defensive side of the ball, the opinions are a little more varied right now with the Texans, I think.
Right, yeah. And Robert Mays from The Athletic has a really good podcast, The Athletic Football Podcast. He had a guy, Dan Pizzuta, from the 33rd team on his podcast this weekend, and they were going over all the lingering questions in the AFC South. And I'll just say off the bat, like, I've always really liked Robert Mays, but I was blown away by the depth of knowledge these guys had of each of these teams. That you can tell that they watch a lot of film, and some of the specific plays they're bringing up are things that you would think really only Texans fans might have a memory of and everything. Like, I was blown away. So I listened keenly because they've got concerns about they're very positive about the Texans, but they're bringing up all the lingering concerns, many of which are the same ones we have. And Robert Mays put it perfectly when he talked about Jaylen Pitre.
Jaylen Pitre, up and down, right? There are elements to his game that I find very interesting and very intriguing. He led all safeties in run stops last year for PFF. He will fly to the ball. Problem. He will fly to the ball. That is also part of the issue. He missed a lot of tackles. I saw DeAndre Hopkins roast him on double moves twice in those games against the Titans. I love DeAndre Hopkins with all of my soul. 2023 DeAndre Hopkins is not Tyreek Hill. Like, him beating you on vertical routes is not exactly what you want.
You brought up Ben Dubos's tweet earlier in the response to my who should start the first game of a playoff series for the Astros, and Fromber was one of the choices, and Ben Dubose said it's something to the effect of, I don't know, I like Fromber a little more than I like Fromber.
Yeah, no, Framber doesn't trust Framber. Or something.
That.
I trust Framber more than I trust Framber. Yeah.
The implication being there's two Frambers.
Yeah.
And I think you hear that cut from Robert Mays there, and it's almost like there's two Petries.
The part of Pitre that, there's an aggressiveness to him that, frankly, if he were Cam Chancellor's size, and if you had an Earl Thomas behind him, you might say, all right, yeah, okay, he's overly aggressive and this, that, and the other, but he's not a box safety. He's not built like that. He's going to be after the guy that has to be a versatile safety that can play the back end. And I think last year, it wasn't his football IQ, it was his mindset more than anything. It's that he jumped things too quickly and too early, too often. The missed tackles, I don't worry as much about, because I think I really think D'Amico's mindset is kind of like he wants guys just taking their shots, because as long as you got a swarm mentality and you got three other guys coming in behind you, it's okay. As a safety, you have to be a little bit more careful about that, because you're supposed to make things safer for everybody else. You're the line of last defense at times. I think with Jaylen Pitre, a lot of what the Texans coaching staff is going to be watching for this year is, has he really learned from his mistakes, got temporarily benched in that Browns game, and is he going to play more like an actual safety this year than a freelancer? And it's a huge, huge question mark to have on your roster, especially when Justin Simmons is sitting out there.
Yep. Yeah. No, you're right. There's other solutions out there. I'd always rather if there's a young player, Seth, who we're hoping like in year 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 is going to make some sort of leap or is going to turn into something that the team planned on them being when they drafted him, I'd always rather have it be the issues Jaylen Pitre is having than have it be like actual physical issues like, oh, man, this guy's a step slower than we thought he was, or he just can't get to a spot, or he's just physically not tough enough or strong enough or willing to do the tough and strong things. Like Pitre, if he can just – sounds like if he can just get his mind right and wrap his brain around the scheme a little bit more, he'll be better off.
So, and again, they were very positive on the Texans. This is not Robert Mays bashing the Texans or anything, but he's bringing up his lingering concerns. I do disagree with him, and I'm checking myself to be sure. He's a really smart guy with an outside perspective, so I really need to check myself perhaps on his opinion about Christian Harris.
Christian Harris is a third-round pick at linebacker. He has not come along. I think last year they hoped he would come along a little bit faster. You give a guy some grace. That position could take a little while in terms of development. It's a new system, but they paid Azeez Al-Shire. Again, it's just one of those moments where these guys who should be cheap for you, you're having to spend money at those position groups.
Okay, so this is where I disagree with Robert Mays. I agree that he came along slowly. And to this tune, just in terms of overall activity, I don't like looking at total tackles as an indication that somebody's good. A lot of times guys accumulate tackles even as they're playing poorly at linebacker. But I think this matches the eyeball test. In the first 8 games that he played last year, missed 1 game due to injury. In the first 8 games that he played, Christian Harris had 22 tackles. In the second 8 games that he played, he had 49 tackles.
Jeez.
Like, he more than doubled his production in the second half of the season. And then in the playoffs, he had 12 tackles, 6 in each of the playoff games. Like, he came along slowly, but D'Amico called last year kind of like Christian Harris's rookie year, and that he was still a young player and he's learning this system. I thought he showed incredible growth throughout the season, and the signing of Al-Shire to me wasn't an indication of Christian Harris not coming along. It was that they like Christian Harris at will linebacker. He's still a young guy to where he doesn't have to think at much at will linebacker as you have to at Mike linebacker, and they feel better about Al-Shire than they did about Blake Cashman or Denzel Perryman or anybody else like that, and or Henry To'oTo'o. I might have swapped Henry To'oTo'o's name for Christian Harris in what Robert Mays just said.
Yeah,
because I felt like Henry To'oTo'o didn't come along as quickly as I thought he would or hoped he would. So I disagree with him there. I think they probably feel pretty good about the potential of Christian Harris, and we know that D'Amico Ryans really likes Al-Shire.
Yeah, right. I disagreed on both of those fronts with him as well. Particularly the Al-Shire one was a curious thing because I don't look at that as in today's NFL. For a team that needed a Mike linebacker, I don't look at that as a splurge. If they had spent 17 or 18 million on Patrick Queen, that to me is a splurge. This is a guy they're familiar with who's been productive in Al-Shire. And I would say, too, Seth, I love your stat about Harris and the first 8 games and the last 8 games. I would say, too, just in terms of the eye test, not just him being around the ball, but when you said that, I'm thinking, man, it felt like he lived in the backfield for an inside linebacker as well in the second half of the season. He had 7 TFLs for the season, 1 in the first 8 games, 6 in the last 8 games. So it's not just he's around the ball, he's making tackles. Like, he's getting into the backfield. Like, he was a disruptive force.
A lot of the areas for growth for him have to do on the pass coverage side and not biting on play action. I mean, the linebackers last year were really bad at biting on play action. And I would go back to Jaylen Pitre. That's another thing that Jaylen Pitre didn't do a great job of handling like a veteran, but because he was only a second-year player also in this scheme for the first time. I think there were times where he was making up for poor linebacker pass coverage and doing too much in doing so. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of moving parts there that affect each other. So I'm very optimistic about Christian Harris. And again, I can't stress enough, Mays was being very positive about the Texans in general. That was the one take he had that I just adamantly disagreed with.
Yeah, same here.
The other guy that he had on his podcast, Dan Pizzuta, who's from the 33rd team, I think he pointed out something that I think a lot of Texans fans and a lot of our listeners feel about the precariousness of the cornerback position.
Again, Stingley is, I agree with you that he's like a star, but 9 games played in 2022, 11 in 2023, that is a concern when you're missing guys. I like Meneser, who they brought in, but if he doesn't start, their other outside corners right now are either going to be Jeff Okudah, who again, it's a guy teams continue trying to take the swing on, just hasn't clicked. CJ Henderson, they brought in, who just has not been one of the worst corners in the league, just kind of from the time he was, I think, the 9th overall pick. And so you are running a little close to the sun in some of these places.
Yeah, and I think bringing up Stingley's injury history, I think it's something that I myself am guilty of kind of glossing over.
Yep.
Because you saw such incredibly good play out of Stingley when he finally came back this year and played consistently. I don't think you can go into the season just chalking him up for 17 games. And then when you start to look at it through that lens, we've got a couple of project guys. We've got a rookie in Lassiter, and just it's precarious. Precarious would be the word I would use.
The Stingley injury thing is a bigger concern to me than the American Idol audition they're having at the other side on corner. Yeah. Because there's Mike Ford in there as well, who's kind of a big body cornerback. He kind of the eyeball test out at OTAs. You look at it and go, oh man, who's that guy? Oh, that's the Ford brought in. I'm not saying he's going to be a great player. I'm saying he looks the part. I've come to grips with how they're handling the second cornerback. I'm not crazy about it.
Well, you feel good about it as long as Derek Stingley is healthy.
Precisely.
That's the big thing.
If Stingley gets hurt, then the other side. If Stingley gets hurt, then it's going to be rough sledding back there, regardless of who's your second corner.
Look at the difference between the first Browns game and the second one. One of the big differences was that they had Derek Stingley shadow Amari Cooper.
Yeah.
So Amari Cooper doesn't get 275 yards receiving in the second game the way he did in the first one.
That's right.
So that and I mean Stingley hasn't had a genuinely healthy season since his freshman year at LSU.
2019.
2019.
Yeah. You want to hit this one more on Kamari Lassiter? We got time.
Yeah, this will be the big thing to watch with Kamari Lassiter. I think Robert Mays, not even with his own opinion, but he's a guy that, he goes to the combine. He talks to a lot of people on NFL staffs and a lot of scouts and everything. This is what he says a lot of NFL people are saying about Kamari Lassiter.
I'll be curious to see what happens with Lassiter. There are people that think he's a nickel only. And so if he is, and he's your nickel corner here, they still have Desmond King on the roster, but Desmond King's getting a little bit older. It really does feel like we're going to crack that pool queue in half, and we're going to have tryouts for that other outside corner spot with Jeff Okudah and C.J. Henderson.
Yeah,
Crack
I like that last part about cracking the pool queue in half.
Wow.
Okudah and Henderson, each with a. You want the thick end, right, of the pool cue? I guess if you crack it.
Dude, I don't know. I told you during the break I started in on Sons of Anarchy this weekend with Amy. She's watched it already.
Yeah.
There's a scene with a pool cue in the first couple episodes of Sons of Anarchy.
Oh, I don't remember that. Oh, okay.
Broke the pool cue over the knee and took the pointy end of it and jammed it, planted a flag right in the dude's crotch.
Ah.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So the breaking.
That seems excessive.
Yeah. Well, it was a dire situation, I'm sure.
Like, I guess bikers who run illegal arms. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah,
that's in the playbook.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. They're not borrowing sugar from their neighbors. No.
So Lassiter is strictly a nickel back. I think it depends. I think that. I think D'Amico's always going to run a lot of zone. I think that's like anytime you talk over and over again about how the defensive line is the engine of your defense, in a defense like that, what that allows you to do is you create pressure without having to blitz, and without having to get aggressive on the backside, without having to play a ton of man. So I think they probably look at Lassiter, who could be a good zone corner. And again, when you've got Derek Stingley that can handle the really heavy-duty man matchups, then that's what you have. So, which would be a nice situation as long as Derek Stingley can stay healthy.
Got to be healthy. Yep.
So I am. It just made me more and more feel like, okay, Stephon Gilmore is still out there. And as far as what Robert Mays said about Des King. Yeah, not only is he getting old, but he was cut by the Texans last year.
Yeah.
He was cut by the Texans in training camp, brought back and played well. But I don't think you can look at him as a guy that, he's rock solid for the entire season.
You can't. Text message, line worker here. Today's my first day of not working 16 hours. So happy to listen to y'all in my car, not my truck. Yeah, man. Those line workers the last week or so, y'all been putting it out there, man. Yeah, appreciate you tuning in. Glad you get to listen in your car and not your truck, and we appreciate you tuning in every day. Text in 713-572-4610. If you're taking the holiday here and you're listening, give us a shout here on a Memorial Day morning. Payne and Pendergast.
Line workers are kind of like professional athletes. They make good money, but then you find out that's where the comparison stops. You find out how much professional athletes make, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, screw them. Line workers make good money, but their bodies get beat the hell up. Yeah, and it's dangerous to boot. They have to work like long hours and 30 feet in the air in bad weather conditions with sleep deprivation and everything, and it's just physically tough on them. So thanks for listening, man.
Yeah, appreciate
you. I've got one of my. I've got a good friend who's a retired line worker, and he I'll tell you this. man, as you're sitting there tired in your car instead of your truck, he has enjoyed his retirement. He got himself a nice pension, and man, the day he retired, he was retired.
Yeah.
I can't keep up with a guy.
No, dude.
Oh, he wants me to go over and drink beer in his